So thank you everyone for coming along to this session on multi-org collaboration architecture. I hope you understand what that means. If you don't, I hope you understand what that means by the time I finish. My name is Richard Clark. I'm the Chief Technology Officer from Make Positive, a UK ISV and SI partner back in, say, in EMEA. If you want to contact me after the session today, you can reach me on Twitter, richclark808, or better still, via the Success community. It's out there, let's use it. Among all the Richard Clarks, most of them are me, but the one you want to reach me on is the Make Positive one. So today what I'm going to talk about is I'm looking at the fact that with Salesforce it's no longer a CRM only tool. And as that customer base for Salesforce grows year on year, we need to collaborate more and more, both internally and externally with other Salesforce users. We need that single customer view that we're so elusive that we're all looking for, both internally and again, when we share data with our partners, we need to have that single customer view, one source of the truth. We need to avoid having multiple logins across orgs. Okay, I think we all suffer that problem when we work on different people's communities or work even with your own orgs. It's quite painful having the multiple logins. Ideally, I'd like to have a single chatter feed for all the Salesforce orgs I'm a member of. And I want to make sure all my master data across all those orgs is managed for me, and we want to minimize impact on users when we change it. So I'm going to talk about the classic use cases of multi-org and multi-community. So even if you're a single org, you can still face some problems with multi-community, which I'm going to tackle. I'm going to talk about the different architecture solutions that are available and some best practice experience of when to use each. And this session is aimed at architects, consultants, and business users looking for solutions for multi-org or multi-community. If you're a developer and you're looking for hints and tips on APIs you want to use and things like that, I'm not going to be able to answer those questions, but feel free to post them and I can get back to you with the answers. So say, CTO Make Positive, I'm certified admin, sales, service cloud, and developer. Also run a team of architects at Make Positive where we have some certified TAs as well and looking to grow that over the next year. So first I'm going to talk about what is an org. I'm then going to talk about the reasons for multi and org and multi-communities and talk about the single and multi-org architectures when it comes to communities. And then from the problems that raises, I'm going to talk about how we can solve some of those challenges. So firstly, I want to define what is an org. Seems like a simple question, but when I typed this into Google, I got a number of different responses. None of them were very clear. This one from Roberto DeSisto from Gartner I did like, because it was very succinct. It didn't mention the word multi-tenant anywhere, so it was addressable by all people, I feel. So an org is in the Salesforce vernacular, is a logical instance of data and metadata for a set of users. Now, in that sense, I think when it comes to communities, you have also an isolation of chatter data. Obviously, we have the same metadata, but we also have isolation of data for communities. So I very much treat communities as mini orgs, and we'll see that within the architectures that I do here. So when it comes to collaboration across communities, even a single org can be an issue that I'm trying to tackle. So why do we have multi-orgs? Well, the classic use cases are organic growth. So we have a company, independent departments or divisions over the last 15 years, each have acquired or started using Salesforce for their own purposes. And then within that organization, you tend to find there's more and more instances of Salesforce, each doing different things. Also, we see often an organization, their sales and contact center divisions are very separate, and each has put in place their own version of Salesforce with their own settings and configuration. Obviously, mergers and acquisitions, when two companies come together, either through an acquisition or a merger, there's often no budget, no appetite to change, and no single owner. Whose org is it? When we have two orgs, which org wins? So you often find that both orgs still survive that merger. And then we have corporate strategies. There may be very good reasons that we want to keep our business units autonomous, that we don't want to all be in one Salesforce org because we've got different requirements. Or there may be regulatory reasons. So like in the UK, the electricity industry, the distributor and supply parts need to stay separate. They need Chinese walls between their data. And then finally, the other we're different companies. Each of us is a different legal entity. We each have Salesforce for our own reasons, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be collaborating as partners, suppliers, and customers using Salesforce. And similarly for multi-community, so what are the reasons for that? Well, as soon as you enable communities, you have multi-communities because you have this internal, this default community for your internal users today when you use Chatter. So if you enable one customer community, you're already facing the multi-community problem. And obviously, with our customers, partners, and companies, we have different groups and needing different communities for different purposes. You wouldn't put your partners in the same community as your customers. You have different content you want to show those. And even on a customer community, you have different segmentation. So you may have a gold, platinum, diamond customer portals, different features, different brands potentially as well. Within each of those customer portals, there may be very good reasons for having separate communities. But there are some chatter posts still that you want all your community users or groups of those users to see and collaborate with too. And many customers want employee interaction in one stream, not multiple. I'm going to talk some more about this and the problem we have. So first I'm going to address the architectures. So we see here I have a very simple, well, relatively simple single org with some additional communities. So we've got our internal org chatter over here. We've got a customer community and a partner community. And we've got our Salesforce data that's shared across those, so that's good. So we've got our single view of the customer. However, we've got diverse chatter conversations happening. So if we look on the left here, my fictional company, Better PLC, in my internal stream, I have a couple of automated posts about groups I've created. But for my same user taken at the same time, when in my customer community, someone's mentioning me and having a conversation with me. The only reason I know about that is if I switch into that community and look, or I have email alerts on. And personally, I really hate email, as anyone at Make Positive can tell you. So when we have multi-org, one of the options we have is to move towards a single org consolidation. This is a very acceptable and valid pattern to take. So when you have a company that has a strategy to combine their multiple orgs into one, this is basically doing Salesforce Org 2 here with its own chatter and community. It's been merged into org number 1. It's really important you take careful planning around this. It's really important you use good tooling for deduplication of data and automated testing. I'd also recommend you consider things like hierarchical custom settings. I believe there's a session this week on that, to make sure that your workflows, validation rules, triggers, and I guess flow triggers as well now, are each customized according to those requirements. So you will have processes from org 2 that you can't just push into org 1, so let you have that differentiation, let you control by profile or by user your business processes by each group. However, we still have that same problem with the chatter collaboration. We still have 3 communities here, okay, and we still have 3 feeds to look at. And if you want to migrate chatter data from this community or this org, that's not a simple thing to do. One of the known issues is if you're trying to move, say, a mention post, the created date for that post, you can't just set through a data loader, even if you have the feature activation from Salesforce. Thirdly, we have a multi-org, master org approach. Again, a very acceptable pattern. A lot of companies address this. So we have a master org at the top here, where we have all our corporate data feeding into that for reporting. We may also be using it for master data management. So it could be unidirectional feed from each of our orgs up to our master org for reporting, or we may be using it for MDM and have a bidirectional feed of data flowing both ways with the truth about the customer account, customer master, key account management from the master org. Now you can use Salesforce to Salesforce for doing this data replication, and you can use the partner ETL tools, many of them at Dreamforce this week. And there is also the cross-org data sharing, which I think it's now out of pilot. I'll check that. The cross-org data sharing allows you to have the master org with the read-write copy of account and custom objects, and then your other orgs have copies of that read-only mode, slightly different to Salesforce. If you're using an ETL solution for federating your data, then you can include chatter posts in that. So you could yourself make sure you tackle that problem of the chatter data and move the feed items and the comments, etc., between orgs. Regardless of which data you're moving, you need to have a very strict conflict management policy. So what happens if you have both of these orgs able to update the same record, whether it's chatter data or an account? What happens if one of them, both orgs make changes at the same time? Who wins that? And then if you've decided how you're going to control that, how do you inform the other person that their changes were lost? You also have to consider your field mappings. So field mappings can be very complex. In org 1, we may be an EMEA org, and we have address line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as some custom fields. The same logical data makes exist in our US org as street, city, state, zip code. Seems like a simple mapping, but of course they're not going to fit. So it's important before you do this, you tackle things like canonical addresses. You make sure you standardize your data model as much as you can before you attempt this. Okay. And finally, we have a multi-org cross-community collaboration. So this could be organizations where each org needs to be maintained individually, or it could be different legal entities. So each of us in this room are in this situation that if we want to collaborate, we have our own orgs which we want to control. We don't want anyone else imposing changes on us, but we do want to still collaborate and have conversations. So why do I have to log into your community when I have my own org? So if I'm over here in my org, and I'm also part of your customer community, why is it that I have to go to your org and log into your community when I want to have a conversation with you? You still need to think of MDM, so there may be a need to make sure that you've got understood data, especially with your partner network, to make sure accounts and contacts are shared, even cases. And the examples of this, you think about it today, when you go on to the success community, you're actually logging into Org62, which is seamless in terms of sign-on, but it's still a separate chatter feed, isn't it? You go in there and you have conversations, you collaborate, separate to your daily work in your own org. There's separate chatter streams. So which of these is right for you? So the first one, the single org, just to summarize, we have a centralized IT function. So if your IT is within the company and you've got a single team, then a single org will work very well for you. Make sure you have, across your business units, consistent processes. You don't want to have lots of complexity, lots of rules. Make sure you have clear record ownership. Who owns the record? Who's the account owner? Who's just on the account team? And also you need to work within the org limits. So there are some settings and org limits that you can't change. They may be flexible, but there's still limitations you're placing on yourself. Number of batch jobs, for example. So on the challenges, you've got the field sets, you've got the data limits. You have to think about things like large data volumes. If you've got 100 million records, you're probably not going to suit a single org on that object. You have to think about things like data skew. That's where you have, say, a master detail relationship, and you have more than 10,000 child records for that parent. The org limit's already mentioned too, and if you have really complex sharing rules are a very expensive computation. If you're having to do really complex sharing, then you may actually be better off in multiple orgs. If you have multiple orgs today and you want to move to a single org strategy, obviously we have the same pros and cons. But what you need is also to make sure that strategy is desired, that everyone's bought into that. Because if they aren't, it's going to fail. You need that drive for consistency across the organization. Again, on the challenges, you will have conflicting requirements, and you will have, it's quite hard to say, profile proliferation. So that means, so many times I've seen people do the multi-single org, and what they've done is carry across all the same profiles, because they understand what they are. You go into an org, there's 250 profiles. That's just not maintainable. So if you're going to merge your orgs, look at your profiles, make sure you rationalize them, make sure you get the permission sets out you need, make sure you reinvest your time in your profiles. Finally, thirdly, if you have the master org, so if your business units are autonomous, if they act independently, have different requirements, then you probably need to keep them in their own org still. But you still have this requirement for a centralized reporting, and you don't want to just pull it all out into a BI warehouse. I think we'll see this week with Analytics Cloud as well, even more appropriate to use this solution. The challenges to that is that data mapping I mentioned across orgs, and the record ownership. Who owns the record? Which org is the master of it? What happens if there's any changes? How do we manage duplicates across those orgs? How do we control that? And then finally, the multi-org. So again, if you're autonomous units, they have independent IT teams or different Salesforce partners as their suppliers. You have conflicting feature requirements. So one part of the division wants to use chatter, one part doesn't. One division wants to use a certain custom setting or certain setting, another one doesn't. So also, if you want to collaborate with your customers and partners' own orgs, then you're in this multi-org scenario. You can still be one of these as well, but when it comes to your external network, you're multi-org. So the challenges are the same around that master data management. The corporate reporting becomes a headache. You have to start looking at those BI tools, and you have to be aware that you're going to have these data silos. So each of those four solutions have three common weaknesses, though. We have the disparate chatter conversations, either across communities or across orgs, and we have multiple chatter feeds for our internal users. We also have to tackle the problem of master data management, and we need to worry about deployment. So as soon as you have multi-org, obviously it doesn't apply so much for single org, you need to make sure your portal's still working when you make a change. You need to make sure your orgs are still sync. When I deploy a validation rule or a change set in one org, is my Salesforce to Salesforce still working? How do I check that? So how can you solve and alleviate those issues? That's the point of today. So the first one I'm really going to concentrate on. So this was about collaboration after all. So multi-community chatter collaboration. So at Make Positive, we developed an application about 3 years ago called Passport. And it was the first application that was taking chatter across orgs and bringing it together. And we end up now, we call that application Passport Hub. It runs on the Salesforce One platform using Heroku and a hub and spoke architecture, propagating messages between different Salesforce orgs. We then developed something called Passport Native, because about 18 months ago, we had demand for versions of Passport that were running completely on Force.com. There were large enterprises who weren't happy to use Heroku for whatever reasons at the time, so they were demanding that we do something that was native. And that was a real challenge. That was really, really hard to get that working within the governor limits, and I'll explain how we did that. And then finally, last year, a prospect approached us. They liked what we were doing with Passport, but they had a bigger problem with the community collaboration. So we came up with Passport for Communities, and I'm happy to say now that I think we're live with that customer, and it's working very well for them. And again, it's a 100% Force.com application. Now, I was going to demo Passport, but whenever I try and demo this, all you see is chatter. So it all works exactly the same as chatter works. All we're doing is stuff in the back end. So here in this example, we have Johnny Bainbridge, and we see after his name is EMEA. He's from our EMEA org. And he's having a conversation with Warder in my org, in our local org here. And they're collaborated in one feed, even though they're working on the different orgs. And over here, we have similarly, we have a group that's been synchronized, the EMEA group synchronized into our Asia-Pac org. And the reason we can tell that is we badge with Passport logos anything that's come from a separate org. You see here, Johnny's got a badge on him, and here we have the group with a badge. Again, we can collaborate, individual groups we can select across feeds. Diving into more detail, so Passport Hub, as I say, uses Heroku. So the hub automatically manages the synchronization of those groups and those users. Every time a new user is added, every time a new group is added, if it's included with Passport, it will federate across those orgs. Whenever you connect a new org up as well, the hub will notice that once it's connected, and it will start an immediate data sync of all the past chatter messages that are in scope. Within each org, we have a managed package we install, and that takes care of the profiles, the connections, and the sharing rules for that data. For the Passport Native, the 100% Force.com solution, we had to take a different approach. So we couldn't use the same solution. We couldn't use a hub and spoke architecture like we did before, because having an individual Salesforce org just for that purpose would be probably prohibitive for most customers. And we were faced with the issues with governor limits. Could we still do that? And we decided we couldn't. So we came up with a peer-to-peer model. And on that peer-to-peer model, we were able to deploy any org can be connected to up to 2 other orgs. And again, governor limits restrict us, but otherwise you can see that we can have quite a complex architecture. So what we have here is org A just happens to be at the start of the chain. It has a batch job, and when that runs, that triggers updates. So it talks to the next org in the chain. It says, these are my messages for you since we last talked, and can I have your messages? When that fires, it also then kicks off an asynchronous job on org B, which will then communicate with the people down its stream and bring messages back. So it doesn't wait on a minute basis to go all the way across the whole set of orgs. It will communicate within a few minutes every chatter message. Okay. And then finally, Passport for Communities. So Passport for Communities links a community to the internal chatter. It seems like it's quite easy, but it's surprising how hard this is to do. It provides a user a single chatter feed. That's the whole point of it. So within my one feed, I can have all my interactions with all my customers, all my partners, all my internal users. It works as a managed package installed to the org, and you can combine it with the hub and the native solutions, and it works therefore with both single or multi-org. You can also link multiple communities up. So if you have a partner and a customer community or several customer communities, we can link it all together with the internal community to propagate messages. So how does it work? So Passport uses all standard objects, all the versions of Passport I said about. So it's compatible with Salesforce One, it's compatible with Chatter Desktop, and any other Chatter applications that you use. Within each org, we create what we call a ghost user. Now, as standard, this uses a Chatter free license. And on the Passport Hub product, for example, don't worry about running out Passport free licenses, because that comes with as many Passport free users you need to have all those ghost users. So communities actually interestingly uses those ghost users out the box. So all your internal users have these ghost users already within the communities. So very pleased that Salesforce copied our design for that. Your users, importantly, only need one login. Okay? If they have multiple users already, we can connect those up. So if you have a login to the EMEA org and a login to the Asia-Pac org, we can connect those instead of using ghost users, and you can jump between orgs if you want to actually work on the data. But if you just want to have conversations, you can converse across any of those chatter feeds. Most of the posts that we cover, and I'm going to talk more about that, are using the Salesforce One Platform API. Very pleased Salesforce combined that last year into one API because it's a lot easier to talk about than the 7 or 8 APIs that they used to be called. But there are some posts that we can't do using the APIs. So when it comes to doing an app mention post, there isn't actually an API easily to do that. We have to use the ghost user and act as that user to make that post. Similarly, private messages and files, we have to post those as those ghost users. Groups are synchronized across each reciprocal org, and you have central management of which groups you want to see synchronized across those. And it maintains a mapping between record IDs. So we have something called object collaboration. So while Passport doesn't federate the actual object data, it only federates chatter data. If that chatter is on an account, an opportunity, or a case, then it will make sure when it moves that chatter post across, it reconnects it with the mapping of the same object ID, if you're using ETL or Salesforce. So bringing it all together, Passport applications can be combined to share posts across orgs and communities. So over here we have the partner community, and we're using Passport for Communities to synchronize that with our internal org. But we also have Passport Hub here, so in our partner org B, we're also exchanging messages with those guys. Now, alternatives to that, you can use a single org. You can also use an ETL tool to do this yourself. You don't have to buy Passport. Or you could write your own Passport. But I want to talk you out of that if I can. Single org migration. So if you go for single org migration, again, you've got the single admin, you've got consistent processes, you've got your org-wide analytics. It's a good solution. And it massively reduces your integration. Single org can't be forgotten about. But you have got those complex rules I covered earlier. You've got a single set of settings, single set of limits, and you have a really increased regression test effort that you have to think about. When you make a change, it could break a lot of parts. You still haven't solved the cross-community chatter, though, with a single org. With the ETL integration, so there are free ETL tools out there. That's good news. So you can do it yourself without much cost. You don't have to pay for Passport. That's probably attractive to you guys. And you can reuse it across multiple orgs. However, there's certain things you can't do, and we investigated this originally as one of our options. You can't do things like the app mention support. So if someone posts an app mention chatter message, you can post it as a text message in another org, but they won't be notified, they won't be alerted, they won't be following that. You have to be really careful. If you're using ETL tools for cross-community chatter, then you're basically making an external tool call in and out to move data internally in Salesforce. So you're going to use a lot of API calls up to do something that should really be internal. You're also going to have to make sure you follow the Salesforce releases, so you're going to have to track those as you go through. And I've got to tell you, every single Salesforce release, we have to do an update of Passport. There's always a new feature, there's always something else that we need to support. It also increases in complexity for each org. While this may work very well with 2 or 3 orgs, every time you have another org you want to interact with, it gets harder and harder to do, harder and harder to do the mapping. And it is very challenging. If you're actually talking about working with your customers or partners, it's very hard to agree who owns that ETL tool and what permissions you want to give it. If you choose Passport and Passport for Communities, it can be set up in just one day. And it's suitable across different legal entities for that reason. We include the additional chatter licenses, and you have a centralized place for doing your configuration and issue management. Because it's an application, obviously we support it, and we do all the release tracking. When you connect a new org up to Passport as well, it automatically goes into a sync mode where it tries to recover and put in place all the messages, all the conversations you want replicated to that new org and from that org into the existing ones. Now, the downside is if you want to collaborate on objects, so if you want to collaborate on a case or an opportunity, then you need the appropriate Salesforce license for your Ghost users. So you need your extra sales or Service Cloud licenses, depending which objects you want to collaborate on. If it's not about objects, then it's fine with chatter free. If you're talking about accounts, you're probably talking about Chatter Plus licenses. Also, Passport doesn't move your non-Chatter data. So you still need to use Salesforce to Salesforce or ETL for your object data. And there is a very small Passport license cost from us per user per month if you do want to use Passport. Very reasonable, though. The lessons we learned, though, is Salesforce has been very prolific. When we first did Passport, we were looking at synchronizing these users, synchronizing groups, feed items, comments, polls, likes, attachments. Great, we're done. Oh, no, hang on a minute. Then we had to do subscriptions. We did the object chatter, group memberships, member requests, mentions, comment attachments, comment mentions. We've finished. This product's ready now. And then last year at Dreamforce, what happened? Since Dreamforce 13, we've had topics, private groups, group archiving, announcements, questions, thanks. I'm expecting the list to be just as long at Dreamforce 15 of another set of features. So it requires a full-time team to keep this going and keep it in sync. You also have to think about the parent-child dependencies. So when you're moving a Chatter post, you think you move that post over, but you have to think about who's the user who made that post, make sure that user's replicated first. And if anyone's mentioned in that, you need to make sure that person's created first. And if any groups are now mentioned, you need to make sure that's posted first. So the dependencies can get quite complex. It's really important as well around the org limits. We learned very quickly to optimize our batch jobs. So you go to a customer when they had 10 batch jobs and you can use one of them. They're not very happy about that. They're very precious resources. So we made sure we had just one batch job and had a design pattern that requeued and managed all itself being requeued as well. So make sure you do things like that. The licensing I've mentioned already about the ghost users. So you need the right license type for the right object. We also faced issues, obviously, with governor limits. So web service callout limits affects Passport native. So if we want to move a file from one org to another, with Passport native at least, the 100% native version, we were limited to about 2.5 meg within the 3 meg limit to do that. The workarounds we came up with that is either to post notifications across those other orgs saying user A has posted this file in org B, or Chatter files may solve this over time. The other option is to host your files outside of Salesforce and then make sure you're posting links instead. Even if you solve that 2.5 meg limit, you still have limits on things like heap size. So working natively, there are many restrictions if you're trying to build this. We also found things, especially around, across all the versions of Passport, around Chatter notifications. So the emails, if someone's getting a email setting set up for their Chatter feed, those emails are not sent when they're posted by a ghost user. So we had to work around that with our own workflows. Personally, I try to encourage users to use digests instead of using instant notifications, because for me, the whole purpose of Chatter is to try and avoid all those emails in my inbox every morning that I don't really need to read. And finally, external collaboration. So we also experimented with integration with Jive and Yammer. So by having a tool that's outside, it's very easy to do. The main issue we had with that is doing that feature mapping. So while we can support those, you have to accept limitations on the types of messages that map. Yammer maps better than Jive, but there's still limitations on what you can do. So that's enough about collaboration. Let's talk about some of the other issues of multi-org. So master data management. So I'm not a master data management expert, but there are lots of people at the expo this week who are. And I recommend you see some of them. Consider things like Salesforce to Salesforce. It's free. Don't ignore it. And the cross-org data sharing. If they don't address all your needs, then think about the ETL tools that are out there. Also, consider not just within Salesforce. So if you're doing master data management, you need to think about your ERP systems or your EPOS systems as well. So don't have one solution for linking up your Salesforce org to master data and a different solution for linking up your ERP solution. Use one solution for all of those. And focus on what's essential. Don't try and crack the whole thing at once. Do your accounts and contacts first, maybe. Do your orders, that kind of information first. Don't try and do too much. And make sure you have a very clear system of record. Far too often you go into somewhere, finance or ERP team believes they own the account record, CRM team believe they own it. You've got to have one clear system. As part of that, you need to harmonize unique record identifiers. The amount of times I've been into companies, I look on their account object, and I see 5 external IDs for 5 different keys across 5 different systems. You just shouldn't be doing that. Make sure everyone agrees which is the right identifier. It doesn't have to be the Salesforce ID, but agree that one identifier is the true unique identifier for that account record. And make sure you enforce field and record security in each of your Salesforce orgs to avoid update conflicts. So be religious in doing that, because if someone does get to change a value, if a system admin somewhere can change a value in one of those slave orgs, then you're going to have problems with that data not syncing. And then deployment management. I cannot underestimate how important this is. So in terms of deployment, when we're talking about cross-org, we can't use things like change sets at the moment. So the recommendation I make is to use a master config repository, so something like GitHub or your own Git server, and the Forcecom migration toolkit, or any of the third-party tools that are out there as well. This can be very complex to manage, but it's well worth the effort when you get it working. It is a challenge to keep it 100% accurate as well, very much so. And you have to be careful. If you've got multiple orgs, you need to be very careful about people making local configuration changes. So someone may create a new field in one of those orgs that clashes with something you have in a new master set of configuration. And then your deployment fails. And then you've got data that is already there that you have to migrate or move. You also end up with this approach with a superset of configuration. So you'll find your account object has several hundred fields on for different orgs, different divisions, different business units having different fields. You also find you run out of things like tabs, fields, external IDs, master detail, etc. very quickly if you're not careful. And even if you're using a continuous integration tool such as Jenkins, deployment can be extremely time-consuming, taking several attempts. However, it's also suitable for a single org. So if you are using a single org, moving between sandboxes, the same approach, having a config repository is definitely worth considering still. So the second option is to use managed packages. So the idea here is you have a core managed package for your central functions and your data model managed by one team. And that's done within a separate developer edition org. And you take that base managed package and you deploy it into another developer edition org. And in that developer edition org, you build out your business requirements, maybe for HR, for finance, for the areas that you want to package that functionality. Or if you think of it as an application that sits within your Salesforce, that could potentially be an extension package. And you package that up as well. And then when it comes to your different orgs, what you do is you install those two packages. You install the base package and optionally all the different extension packages that you want to use as well. And the benefit of this is it keeps the core very light, and it allows the local admins in those territories or those companies or those organizations to still make their own changes. Because when you create a managed package, it puts a namespace on it, so it protects you against local changes. However, you still want to look at things like having an approved list of AppExchange apps. So you probably don't want every org using a different ERP solution in Salesforce, Financial Force, or another one. You want to probably standardize on the other apps that they can install. And the private app exchange is one way to do that. If you are using more than 3 orgs, I'd definitely recommend the managed packages over the previous option. Even if you're doing either of those options, and even if you're a single org, you still need certain other processes in place. You need a change management process. You need a change management team to decide what goes into that core set, whether it's the config repository or the managed packages. You also need a governance team to review and accept those ideas into the core. Make sure that you're not duplicating something. Make sure it's not a variation on something you've already written. And make sure they're managing which apps they're permitting to be installed to those orgs. You still need to do config management in either case. You still need that change history because you need to fix and go forward. You can't put an old managed package in. You can't roll back a deployment. You have to fix and go forward. So make sure you've got a copy of what code was there before. I cannot underestimate as well about multiple sandboxes. So if you're on Enterprise Edition, Developer Sandbox on its own isn't really going to cut it if you want to manage these changes. You need to have a separate sandbox for UAT and testing. And make sure you're using an established deployment process. Make sure everyone knows when the change window is and when those changes are going to happen. Make sure you've got a team on hand to test that as well, whether it's smoke testing or using automated tools such as Provar. So Provar is another pitch for another application of ours. They're here at Dreamforce this week. And what Provar allows you to do is it allows you to run regression tests and build your test cases up on Salesforce. And it's the only tool that actually allows you to do this. And it allows you to do it for your internal users, your internal pages, your portals, your communities, even Salesforce One. And it does that. It looks at standard pages, Visualforce pages, and your mobile, web, and hybrid pages. And you can either capture as you click through a page, be an external page, or you can have it inspect your org for you and suggest the fields that you might want to map and look at what's conditional. And unlike other test tools such as Selenium, it's not bound to the IDs that Salesforce generates, it's bound to the metadata. So as long as you don't rename your API names and things, as you test across different sandboxes or different orgs, the test will still run as well. It also includes things like API testing. So as well as testing within Salesforce, we can do a lookup. We can make a web service call out, or we can look at an MQQ and see that a data value exists in a database somewhere else. We can also use it, we weirdly used it also for data management recently. A customer had a problem. A large oil company had an issue with their data across sandboxes. They quickly needed something to pull data from one org to another. We connected Provar up, sucked the data out of one org, captured that, and replayed it through the UI on the other org. It was something we couldn't do through their APIs alone. And also continuous integration. So Provar will work with things like Jenkins, so you can set up automated daily tests and know that your build is safe, that your orgs are all running and your sandboxes are all in sync. So, next steps. So, if you're interested in Passport, just go on the App Exchange and search Passport. I'm not going to do a heavy pitch on that anymore. If you're interested in master data management, go out on the expo, probably visit Informatica first and ask about Cloud MDM, but do visit the other ETL tool vendors and ask them what their message is on MDM. In terms of ETL tools, personally, I've used MuleSoft, Informatica, Jitterbit, Dell Boomi, Talend, and there are many more out there. So again, talk to those guys, see what they've got to offer. And Provar is over in Cloud Expo North, in the far right corner as you walk in. So please go and talk to any of our guys there, Geraint or Ashutosh, about Provar. And you can also visit the website Provar Testing. You can also catch me tomorrow if you have any questions. So I'm going to be a stooge in another session at 3 o'clock from one of our other consultants about setting up the Salesforce console, completely unrelated to today. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yep, if you come up to the mic.
Can you talk about what trends you're seeing in terms of, large enterprises that have adopted Salesforce and have, for the reasons on your first slide, they've adopted multiple instances of Salesforce, and what sort of the trend is towards consolidation versus staying independent? What are you seeing the largest companies doing, and why? What are the best practice trends, if you will?
Okay, so the larger companies we see, largest we've seen is about 50, 60 orgs, and they're never going to consolidate those, and it will never fit in one Salesforce org. So where their main focus was around key account management. So they wanted to make sure they had those global accounts managed across those. And some of those took the master org approach, so they had the key accounts managed for that master org, so they had that org in addition for their reporting across that, but they still wanted the chatter conversations to be company-wide and have that cross-sell, upsell. On the other end of the spectrum, when you look at the smaller companies with maybe 2 or 3 orgs, pretty much they almost always end up opting to migrate and merge their orgs together to this single org migration. Any more? It's quite hard to see with this light in my eyes. Don't be shy. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy Dreamforce. Hope you have a great week.